The Iranian regime's grip is unraveling. That's the assessment of Republican lawmakers on the House Foreign Affairs Committee.
President Trump is warning the regime not to crack down on protesters, or the U.S. may intervene. Meanwhile, the Ayatollah reportedly has a backup plan to flee the country. CBN's Paul Strand reports.
Massive protests across Iran have entered their 11th day. At least 36 people have died, and the regime's arrested more than 2,000 protesters. In a message on social media, Iranian Crown Prince Reza Pahlavi, the son of the deposed Shah, challenged Iranian security personnel to decide if they will choose to protect the regime or the people of Iran. While other uprisings against the mullahs have been stamped out, Hormoz Shariat of Iran Alive Ministries tells CBN News these may last longer. Iran's plummeting economy now threatens the very survival of its citizens as they can't afford food or life-saving medicines.
That's just heartbreaking. When a family, their loved one is dying and they can't afford a $30, $40 medicine that can save their loved one, and they die.
In a social media post, Republican members of the House Foreign Affairs Committee wrote, "Anti-regime protesters are rising up and claiming entire cities. Iranians have had enough of the tyrannical Ayatollah and his murderous mullahs. The Iranian regime's grip is unraveling." President Trump has repeatedly warned the U.S. may intervene if the regime starts killing protesters. While Iran's supreme leader has said rioters must be put in their place, America's move to depose Venezuelan dictator Nicolas Maduro might have him shaken. He's reportedly put together contingency plans to flee to Moscow with 20 top aides. Maduro's removal may severely hit both Iran and its top proxy Hezbollah in the pocketbook. Trade with the South American nation has long let the Iranian regime bypass crippling sanctions. And Hezbollah used Venezuela to raise funds through its ties to criminal gangs and narco-terrorists there.
This is something that the United States has been tracking and trying to push back against for quite some time, and hopefully this strike will reduce the ability of Hezbollah to operate in the region.
Meanwhile, Israel's prime minister says a top priority with President Trump is keeping a lid on Iran's ambition to build nuclear weapons. The two discussed the matter at their recent summit in Florida.
We reiterated our common position of zero enrichment and the need to remove the 400 kilograms of enriched material from Iran and to monitor the sites with close and real supervision.
New York City's Islamist mayor alarmed Jews and their supporters on his first day in office when he immediately revoked policies the former mayor enacted to support Israel. The city has seen a dramatic rise in anti-Semitic hate crimes in recent years. Despite this, Zohran Mamdani claims his leadership won't endanger the Jewish population in his city.
Protecting Jewish New Yorkers is going to be a focus of my administration.
But Israel's foreign ministry shot back on X that Mamdani's new actions contradict his words, writing, "This isn't leadership, it's anti-Semitic gasoline on an open fire." Paul Strand, CBN News.
Well, Israeli ambassador to the United Nations, Danny Denown, joins us now from New York. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you for having me again, Gordon.
Let's talk about Iran, and we've seen protests over the years, and I thought at one point we would see a change in the government, but then they unleashed snipers on the protesters and effectively shut it down. Is this one for real? Are we really going to see a change in the government?
We definitely hope so. We look at what's happening in Tehran and other cities, and we are saying directly to the people of Iran, we hear your voices, we feel your pain, we share your hope for a better future, and we know that, the people of Iran, they suffer from this regime, and they are courageous, they are brave, they are paying a very painful price for their freedom, and we hope that for now we'll see a change. But Gordon, we actually hope that something will change after the successful operation of Israel and the U.S. against the nuclear site in Iran, that the regime will change course, will get the message. But unfortunately, it didn't happen. They continued with the will to build ballistic missiles and the desire to obtain nuclear capabilities and taking the resources from the people of Iran in order to build weapons of mass destruction. So, we are watching what's happening. The U.S. watches what's happening, but also the people of Iran, they are fed up with that.
Well, I read a report this morning that there's now a war council in Iran, and they are actively talking about launching some kind of preemptive strike against Israel. Is that intelligence accurate? Is that report accurate? What is Israel seeing Iran doing in terms of rebuilding both ballistic missiles and nuclear weapons?
We have no intention for escalation. We are a peaceful nation. We have no border with Iran. We have no disputes with them. But unfortunately, we see what they are doing and their desire to build weapons that can destroy Israel. And it's not only the nuclear. It's very important to understand that, I think we were very successful pushing back their nuclear capabilities. But if they will be able to build their ballistic missiles capabilities, that's a problem by itself. When you have 1,000 ballistic missiles and you aim them into one location in Tel Aviv or Jerusalem, it's harmful. It's even at the same damage as a nuclear bomb. So we cannot take that risk. We follow very carefully what's happening there, and we are determined not to allow them to obtain those capabilities.
In our report, we mentioned that whole cities had been taken over by the protest movement, calling for governmental change. Are you seeing that? Is that a reality on the ground?
Well, we get the reports. We see those videos of the young people, taking leadership positions and speaking up against the oppression of this regime. We encourage them. We pray for them. But, we are not the one who are actually involved in that. It's coming from the people of Iran. They are smart enough to understand what's good for them. And I think they are fed up with this regime. And it is about time that we will see a change. They deserve better. Now it's a winter time in Tehran. They don't have heating. Think about the babies in Tehran that suffer because of this regime. They don't have formulas for the babies. They suffer. And the regime takes the funds and the money and the resources in order to send it to the proxies. So they send billions of dollars to Hezbollah, to the Houthis, to radical proxies, rather than invest it in the people of Iran.
Well, let's turn our attention to Venezuela. Delcy Rodriguez, the interim president, called the U.S. military action removing Maduro a Zionist attack. Is that a surprise to Israel? It was a surprise to me. Why is she blaming Israel for this?
Well, it's easy to blame us every time. We are not involved in what's happening in Venezuela. We think the decision of President Trump was a strong decision, a brave decision. I see the UN, the silence of the Secretary General, and I think President Trump is leading the free world, and we commend him for that. But, to blame us or to think that we were behind it, it's science fiction. But you know what? Maybe it is about time to reveal the connection between Tehran and Caracas and the flights that used to go every week between Iran and Venezuela. And we know that they were smuggling weapons and they collaborated together. So I think they hope also for the people of Venezuela for a brighter future.
Yeah, I remember reading that there were direct flights between the two countries, and it just boggled my mind that there would be that kind of traffic between them. Rodriguez has been reported to be in business with some Lebanese citizens. Is that part of Hezbollah? Is that how deep Hezbollah has become in Latin America?
Well, we know that Hezbollah, they used to train in Venezuela. There is a collaboration between Hezbollah, Iran, and the Venezuelan regime. So they are not innocent. Also, we have to realize that Hezbollah is getting a lot of funding from smuggling drugs. And so they have a lot in common, those bad guys. But I think we see the change. We push back Hezbollah in Lebanon. President Trump, is making changes in Venezuela. And I think the Iranians, they look around them and they realize that, their proxies are getting weaker and weaker. And that's a good sign for the beginning of 2026.
Well, there's a bad sign for the beginning. On New Year's Day, the new mayor of New York overturned some pro-Israel executive orders put in place by his predecessor. Well, what's the condition there in New York City? How is this affecting the Jewish community?
Well, we are worried. We see the the language he uses, the incitement. And we saw that it was part of his campaign. But even now, after he got elected, instead of dealing with the problems of the city, he continues to spread the hate against Jews. So, yeah, people are worried here in New York. But I'm sure and I hope that the federal government will make sure that everyone is safe in the city of New York, okay, Muslim, Christians, and Jews.
Well, we join with you. We're worried here in Virginia Beach. I've never seen this level of anti-Semitism in America, and it just seems to be now a political cause. I'm seeing, particularly in the Democrat primaries, anti-Israel sentiment being openly expressed by candidates as if it's some kind of election advantage to be against Israel. I'm very concerned about it, but be assured we stand with you. We're in this for the long haul, and we join in your concern, and we'll continue to speak against it. Well, Ambassador Denown, thanks so much for joining with us and being on our show once again.
God bless you for everything. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Well, in other news, President Trump is issuing new demands to the Venezuelan government. John Jessup has that story and more from our CBN News Bureau in Washington. John?
That's right, Gordon. The president's putting new conditions on Venezuela's interim leader, demanding her administration sever all economic ties with Russia, China, and Iran, and deal only with the United States when it comes to its oil business. He also announced Venezuela is handing over 30 to 50 million barrels of sanctioned oil over to the U.S. Meanwhile, the White House is raising concerns in Europe over talk of acquiring Greenland, a territory of Denmark, which is a NATO ally. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said the president and his team are discussing a range of options, including using the military. The Danish prime minister says she takes the president's comments seriously, and a U.S. takeover of Greenland would mark the end of NATO. She is seeking a meeting with the State Department. Well, here at home, as the Dow Jones Industrial Average is nearing another historic milestone, closing in on the 50,000 level after setting another record Tuesday. The other major indices, the Standard & Poor's 500 and the NASDAQ Composite, are also around record highs. Despite economic concerns over inflation, many analysts believe stocks are still in a long-term uptrend that will last, Gordon, for years and take the Dow much higher.
Well, I easily see it going up. It seems to be on fire right now. The markets are all responding to some very positive economic news coming out of the United States. And it seems to be affecting not just our market, but the world markets. So it's wonderful to see. Certainly our retirement accounts are saying yay. But at the same time, I've got to add a note of caution, and it's a note of caution that curiously comes from Janet Yellen, who just the other day said, well, she's really worried about $38 trillion in a budget deficit. And I've got to remind her, well, if you were worried about it, how about when you were Treasury Secretary trying to do something about it? It just seemed like she ignored inflation and ignored the impact of too much government spending on the overall economy. And that's the reason the average American is very worried. There's a whole lot more month and money for most of us. And it's very troubling to see that when you get out of office, now suddenly you're raising concerns about budget deficits. I'm very concerned about $38 trillion in our national debt. And if that number starts to go down, well, that's a real hooray, and it's more of a hooray than the stock market going up.